So, good afternoon, everyone. Sorry for my voice, but I had an extension voice. So we're now beginning session 3, which will be comparing regional best practices around the world. And I'm Vivian Solis-Weiss from Mexico. I work in the Institute of Marine Sciences of the National University of Mexico. Now I live in the Caribbean branch of it, very close to Cancun and Playa del Carmen, which is horrible, as you know. And so, without going too far, I want to introduce the first talk, which is Restoration of Coastal Wetlands in China, Chances and Challenges, by Xiuzhen Li, yes. Hope I pronounce it correctly, from East China Normal University. And so I want to say that we will do the same thing as the last session, which is I will alert you when the 15 minutes are finished or close to finish, so we have some time for questions. Is that okay with you? Thank you. Thank you to all.
Thank you, Nadia, for the invitation. My pleasure to give a presentation here. My name is Xiuzhen Li from East China Normal University in Shanghai. I will present something about the restoration of coastal wetlands in China. First, China has over 1 million, maybe here, agricultural ponds along the coastal zone. More than half of this is within 5 kilometers from the coastline. And this does not include the fish net and the floating raft farming on the sea. So most of this aquaculture is transformed from coastal wetlands. Here is an example from northern China. This is from a National Nature Reserve at Liahe Estuary. It is a Ramsar site. Now all this agricultural land, the aquaculture lands have already restored to wetlands. And this one is from Jiangsu province because it's out of the nature reserve, so it's still there. Let's have a look what happened at the Liahe Delta. So we have 3 years after levees are flattened on the upper side. So in the meantime, many birds are residing there. On this side, these are the levees partly destroyed just to promote hydro connections from tidal water. But in the lower, this one, the levees are still there, no tidal water enters, so it goes with dry land succession. Therefore, recovery works best with all the levees removed, of course, but they are highly cost. We suggest that levees can be partly reserved to promote habitat diversity with tidal creeks restored. And the trees and the shrubs can be planted along the levees to increase vegetation diversity and increase biodiversity and carbon sequestration with relatively low cost. How about the aquaculture ponds out of the nature reserve? About 2/3 of our fish products are from aquaculture, and 40% is from the mariculture or from the coastal zone. Among these, 80% of the seafoods are shellfish, others are algae, shrimps, crabs, and sea cucumbers. Fish is only a small fraction. If we turn all the aquaculture ponds into wetlands, and then how to keep the income and the jobs of the local community working on aquaculture, and how to maintain the productivity that can provide enough seafood for the consumers. I like seafood, so I don't want all the aquaculture returned to wetlands, although I'm a wetland scientist. One of the suggestions is to keep at least half of the area as tidal wetlands. And the aquaculture ponds can provide food for some birds And tidal wetlands are floating mats like this one. They can absorb excessive nutrients and provide habitats for birds. And fishing tourism can also be encouraged. They can compensate the loss of aquaculture ponds. An example from Hong Kong is the Maple wetland. The tourists, farmers, and birds can coexist harmoniously by managing them, especially during winter. And the aquaculture ponds are dredged in turn, and the tourists are limited with appointment in winter. Another story is about Spartina alterniflora. It is a species introduced from the United States, from their eastern coast. The benefits is they are very good at coastal protection and for land accretion, and good for carbon sequestration than many of our native species. And they can purify the water along the coastline, provide food for the benthic species and fish. But their negative effects are also obvious. They are quite dense and tall. They are taller than me and very hard for birds, to hide or predate. And they can occupy the niches for the native plant species and block tidal creeks. Thank you. Sure. So at the beginning of this year, the government decided to eradicate all the Spartina along the China coastline within 3 years. It's a very big challenge to remove all of them because it's over 700 square kilometers. And even more challenge will appear afterwards. So what if the native species cannot survive? Because this species is very tolerant to salinity, but our species, many of our native species cannot survive under high salinity. And how to deal with erosion if they are removed. And carbon dioxide emission may happen due to disturbance of the sediments, and it's also very highly cost for eradication, restoration, and maintenance afterwards. About the cost, it's about 50 million Chinese yuan per square kilometer, so it's about €1 equals to about 7 Chinese yuan. So if the same amount is used for management, it can be much more cost-effective, and also with other functions of Spartina remain. And the high maintenance cost afterwards, for example, sedimentation of tidal gorges and algae blooming in the enclosure, and decrease the salinity, reed expansion, and frequent reinvention of Spartina outside the levee will all appear, which increase the maintenance cost and the disturbance of the habitat during eradication, like this one. And the restored wetland has no or limited natural tidal influence within the enclosure. So this is not sustainable, we think, although it did attract many birds. And also enhance the risk of coastal erosion may happen, and loss of blue carbon. This one is the newly eradicated one. And the coastal erosion already happened along the coast. Even Spartina is already there. If we remove the Spartina, more erosion may happen. And this is what happened after the eradication. So the upper one, this one is by physical enclosure and inundation. And this one is by spraying of chemicals all of them appear again. So this one is outside the levee after we eradicate them. And this one in the yellow dots is after the reinvasion, we need to spray them and kill them again and again. So it all costs a lot of time and energy and money, of course, to eradicate them. And also, example from San Francisco Bay, they started the eradication of Spartina in the year 2000. So after 23 years, they still have to spray them every year. So it's not successful with 3 kilometers. So what about our project of 700 square kilometers? And Spartina has to be partly reserved since one of the endangered species is called ridge-withed rail. It's this small bird. It's a rare species, but it prefers the habitat of invaded Spartina here. And also the scattered Spartina patches provide habitat for thousands of birds at the east headland of Shanghai. This one. Our one black dot is a bird. So when Spartina is scattered there, they can provide habitat. Another example is southern Shanghai or the northern coast of Hangzhou Bay here. So all along this coast, about 46 kilometers long of the coast is occupied by Spartina. It is a erosion coast, especially in summer and autumn. Typhoon often comes to hit this area. So it's especially dangerous and frequent storm surges if coincided with high tides. So the average water salinity here is about 15 in average. So it's hard for our native tall species, it's called reed, the common reed, cannot survive under such kind of salinity. And our saline tolerant species is much smaller, so they cannot provide the coast. So Spartina is the only species that can easily survive on the tidal flat. If we plant the reed, the tidal flat needs to be elevated to avoid frequent inundation from saline water. So the Spartina can provide very important protection for the southern coast of Shanghai. And a complete remove may cause strong erosion and hazard. Unfortunately, all the Spartina, what happens? Along this coast has already removed. They used to be like this. At this moment, they are removed. Next year, they will plant something. Probably the scarpers, the very small one. Actually, I used to have a project in the last couple of years. We make use of the biomass of Spartina. The philosophy is to mitigate the storm surges in summer and autumn and harvest them for use before the birds come, the wintering birds come. And the bird habitat in winter and spring, the birds can use there. So within about 13 hectares of the harvested area, about 8,000 birds were recorded, and January has the highest number of wintering species observed. And we can abstract bioliquids and salt from the biomass, and the products can cure the gout or reduce the blood uric acid. Many people along the coast suffer from gout. And they can also make healthy beverages with this kind of bioliquids. And after remove the salt, the feeding stuff can be used for animals and organic fertilizers. Another solution is to make biochar from spartina. It has very high surface area ratio with rich oxygenated functional groups and a high rate of inorganic minerals in ash. So it is very useful for agriculture and chemical plants and many other aspects, of course. So we have many ways to make use of the biomass. Another suggestion is to make use as a silage fodder. The cost protein in spartina is over 8%. It is higher than our regular crop stems from maize and rice. And we don't need to remove the salt from the hay, which is palatable for the cattle. And we can store them there 1 or 2 years for storage, and it's easy for transportation. And we can harvest them in July and October. July, because we need the dry mass is within the range of 25 to 35, which is best for the silage fodder for incubation. And after we harvest in July, that means we can avoid the seedlings in August and September. And afterward, the first harvest, it can grow again. So at the end of October, we can harvest them again. Okay. And they can benefit from the fodder, and also we can use them as for carbon sequestration and prevent from storm surge. And this is an example of after harvesting, and there is a storm surge happened in last September, and fortunately, in the harvested zone of spartina, sedimentation appeared, and in the scurper zone and also in the bare flats, they are eroded, and also the carbon on topsoil in the scurper zone lost, and also the biomass, the root biomass also lost in the scurper zone. But in the harvested spartina zone, there is no loss of carbon and biomass. And also after harvesting, when high tide comes, birds also can use this habitat. And also we have some other solutions for the use of this spartina area, like some kettles. They can browse the spartina as well. So no need to eradicate them. Also in the agriculture at high tidal zone, and people can breed fish and crabs in this kind of area. And lastly, a little bit about the dredging sediments. So the Yangtze estuary has about 5,000 cubic meters of mud every year dredged. So in the last, from 2010 to 2020, this area, about 100 square kilometers was constructed as land, but now it's not allowed to enclose the land for reclamation anymore. So the plan is to make use of the dredged sediment at this area and create the tidal marsh like this. So they can provide many benefits, from carbon sequestration for biodiversity conservation and the potential land resources in the future. It's just a plan. So our idea is to make use of them as a kind of, so first use the sediment to create wetlands, and then reclaim the wetland, and then create wetlands again. So this is our suggestion. So the final conclusion is to compromise of multifunctions in the coastal restoration, So with the focus function of biodiversity, and in the meantime, we encourage the raw resources, water purification, carbon sequestration, and wave attenuation and sedimentation functions together to promote coastal sustainability or the coastal resilience. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
It was very interesting, and I think we have time for one question still.
Yes.
Yes.
No, just thank you for the presentation. Very interesting. The size is impressive, of course, compared to ours. And but the question is concerning the sediments that you're dredging. Do you have any issue concerning the quality, or the chemical quality, let's say, of the sediments to be dredged, and then which kind of criteria do you have to qualify the sediments?
Thank you. Actually, the quality of the sediments is much better than the quality of the local sediments in Shanghai, because Shanghai is a city and used to have industry. So the newly created land is now ready for agriculture. It will provide vegetables for the people in Shanghai.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you. And now we move on to the next talk, which is by Uki Dominic Tehile. Hope I pronounce okay. He's from Abu Kabar Tafawa Balewa University in Nigeria. Sorry for the pronunciation. And the title is Fostering Collaborative Approaches for Protecting Nigeria's Coastal Ecosystem through Sustainable Management Strategies. Go on.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I stand on the existing protocol, initially recognizing the efforts of those that were on the high table here, and also Prof. Nindi and the co-orders for the recommendation. I'm Uchi Dominic from Abubakar Tafawa Balewa University. I'm going to present on fostering collaborative approaches for protecting Nigeria's ecosystem through sustainable management strategies. I will start with the introduction. The Nigerian coastal region spans an impressive length of up to 853 kilometers that goes through many states in Nigeria, such as Akwa Ibom, Cross River, Ondo, and notably, Lagos emerged as the significant economic powerhouse within this coastal region because it is the hub of Nigerian economy, where there are many people population. Although Nigeria has about 200 million population plus, and is being concentrated in Lagos. So any effects in Nigeria, especially the coastal region, the significant is more in Lagos. And this Lagos had been confronted with the mounting challenges posed by the sea level rise and the human-induced impacts and the coastal communities, particularly in rural areas that bear the dents of these adverse effects. As you can see now, this is the hydrological map of Nigeria. In Nigeria, we have two major rivers. This is the river Niger and the river Benue, and that is the confluence. And then when you count down, you have the deltas and the distributaries, the estuaries that are mixed, that is the fresh water, and then the seed water, the ocean water, which is the salt water. And most of these activities are being concentrated in this coastal region, and then the Lagos is there, where it has most of these activities. It could be economic activities that are positive and also negative. Negative in such a way that you have a lot of pollution within this coastal region that are being very difficult to manage because of the population density. And this is the map showing the coastal region, which I have mentioned before. These are the states that make up the coastal region. The importance of this map is to show that the Nigerian system in the country as we are, there are many diversities, many tribes. What's Akwa Ibom? Excuse me, sorry. Oh my God. Okay. What Akwa Ibom here will be doing, it will maybe different from what Lagos people are doing. What Bayelsa are doing, it will be different from what rivers are doing. Then it affects the ecosystem, it affects the seed ecosystem and marine environment a lot, because we are not unified, tribes are different, culture are different, and moreover, that is why it is important that we have a United Nations Decade Action for Behavioral Change. Because what these people are doing here, they may think it's not negative to the ocean because of the cultural activities that had been built, the inheritance, but there is every need now to at least sensitize and sensitize them, create awareness. This is how we have to preserve our own marine ecosystem. Now, pollution in the coastal region. Nigeria stands as one of the highest global contributors to the plastic pollution and generating about 2.5 million tons, which is out of 88% of this plastic remain in the country within the coastal region because they have not been cycled. No means of trying to recycle this plastic, and then they accumulate in the coastal region, and they're polluting the ecosystem, the marine system, with other ions in the water, with generating other ions, and there had been a lot of water pollution that even the marine system, the living organisms, find it very difficult to dwell in this part of this region. As you can see, this is a picture by Guardian newspaper. This is the level of a polluted site in the coastal region of Nigeria, and most of these are plastic that are being heaped up because there have been no effort in order to recycle it and take it, clean it from there because of the density of the population that are there. And this also a picture showing that is the embankments with the land and that of the seed. Also in Lagos, this is how a place had been polluted. These are the practical human activities that you now experience in Nigeria. In short, when I say Nigeria, you just take it to be Africa at whole, because some efforts or countries have been trying, like Ghana, and then they are within in Africa as well. You see, these my brothers here, as you can see in the picture, they are washing directly in the ocean, and now it affects the marine system that are there. It kills some of these living organisms that even attract carbon from the atmosphere, thus reducing the global warming. These are some of the characteristics of the region. We have frequent flood and a major threat to the coastal towns, and inability to secure food supply because seed water flooding makes farmland unusable. There had been flood, erosion, and affecting biodiversity in such a way that it's very difficult to farm on this coastal region. Because why the coastal region is more dense is simply because farmers, we in Africa, we are predominant, we use agriculture. Agriculture is our own livelihood. Everybody ships way to the coastal region, sometimes because of drought, effect of climate change, because of drought. They go close to the coastal region in order to irrigate their crops. And it has been very dense. Pollution had been there affecting the biodiversity and the agriculture, which about 70% of the people depend, had been affected greatly. And then it continues, such as agricultural land, tree crops, fresh water, mangroves, they had been affected as well. We have various types of soil in Nigeria, the coastal region, including also we have vegetation pattern that is very proximity to the ocean. These places are mostly home to salt marsh, mangroves, sandy clay, and the alluvial soil. That is the extract of the fresh water from the River Niger and River Benue and other rivers that contribute to the flow to the ocean. Now, we have such characteristics of this alluvial soil, which now provide good fertile land for the people. And then when they shift there, the intensity of the population cannot be contained, and we have various means of human polluted activities. Then the coastal region, the settlement, as the other map shows the settlement of the coastal region. This is the coastal region that's now linked with the Atlantic Ocean here. This region are the settlement, and you see it's very dense in such a way that to have a kind of livelihood within this and then coastal region. Then approaches for protection. Promoting seedweed growth is a multi-purpose approach that is essential to protecting coastal areas and meeting the demand of the coastal population for a living. Giving people in coastal area that rely largely on the ocean as their source of income, this becomes very essential by supporting organic agricultural methods and removing the need for harmful chemicals that harm the ecology and the biodiversity in the ocean. Seedweed provide a sustainable option because now, when we want to change the attitude and the behavior of the people that live in this coastal area and depend on agriculture, there must be an alternative way in order to move them from there. And then seedweed can be very important because it can provide a kind of alternative livelihood to these people. To these people, if now you say they should stop soil mining, spreading of these chemicals that flows in the ocean that kill some of these organisms, you have to provide an alternative livelihood for them to depend. And then seed-weed farming, especially kelp farming, benefit coastal farmers financially in addition to promoting ecosystem, ecological health. Approaches for protection continue since seedweed planted along beaches function as natural buffers, strengthening regions susceptible to erosion and stone soil. These all-encompassing techniques include erosion management. We can also manage erosion with the seed well, moreover, encouraging seed well beds to profilate, increase biodiversity, and create ideal home for for a variety of marine organisms. Seaweed are essential for the absorption of nutrients, particularly for the reduction of phosphorus, nitrogen pollution in the coastal water, because the bottled water that accumulates, these are the kind of minerals or the ions that they degenerate in the water, such as phosphorus. Seed farming promotes environmental friendly agricultural methods and increase the economic stability of the coastal town. It also serves as organic filter, drawing pollutant and enhancing the chemical cleanness of the water as well. It continues through awareness creation and educational initiatives is essential. Data from ongoing monitoring and assessment are also very crucial to assess the level of impact, the negative and the positive of these protective approaches, and also encouraging management techniques are also very essential for this coastal ecosystem and policy implementation. Implementation plays a key role in this, because there must be policy, regulation, legislation in order to back up with this, so that the activities will be regulated. A shared commitment to sustainable practices among coastal communities should be fostered through behavioral change, assisted by opinion leaders at the local level, which will instill good attitudes towards seaweed conservation. Others include sand-dune protection, natural-based solution, making protective wind waves and wind breakers approaches continue. In Africa coastal region, to recycle such plastic can be financial support, by there is carbon credit. This can also bring another alternative livelihood for those people that farm at the coastal region, by creating a carbon credit. And also, these carbon credits can also enhance development, create infrastructure by providing incentives to sustainable activities. This will help to mitigate the effect of climate change, promotes a circular economy, and offset carbon emission in addition to addressing environmental changes. It also, this one too is also another approaches for protection in order to empower people through the establishment of workshops that bridge agricultural land and the management of the ocean. And then we still have sustainable management, which are modern instruments such as ocean observation system, which this particular organization is trying to look on it and then develop in Africa, like CMCC. These mechanisms are essential for making well-informed decisions. They provide information on water movement along the shore by measuring the direction. It's really very important. That is trying to forecast, trying to take the images through the satellite and also forecast what will happen in the future. And this sustainable management continues. And the last one, to create capacity that foster international cooperation and accomplish environmental goals. Developing countries must be equipped with the knowledge and abilities to employ environmental specific coastal forecast that will create a monitoring system. It's really very important for international collaboration, as at least I've been invited in Africa to narrate how the ecosystem had been affected through human activities and the rest. Thank you. That is the end of my own presentation. Thank you.
We have a little time for questions if someone wants.
So, very interesting. I just wonder if you can tell us, why do you think seaweeds are the best for your environment? Is that because seaweeds were there before and they went away, or mangroves? How did you make the choice between seaweeds?
I make the choice because there had been a mangrove, but all for farmers to enhance these activities are sometimes really very difficult. They see that to get a benefit is a long-term effect compared to seedweed, which the benefit are very immediate, and they can create alternative livelihoods. And from this seedweed as well, carbon credit can be enhanced. And those are the things, the awareness creation and sensitization, and also to demonstrate and practicalize this thing on the various demonstration plots will enhance farmers' ability for alternative source, rather than creating a kind of density at the coastal system, at the coastal region of mining, using agricultural chemicals that are very dangerous to the microorganisms that are in water, because then there is erosion. It flows into the ocean, affecting a lot of biodiversity. And this seedweed can create an immediate benefit to the farmers, and then there will be alternative agricultural livelihood for them.
Well, thank you very much. And now
We have another question.
okay.
Sorry, I have one question. Thanks again for the presentation.
Yes.
As we are going back to the presentation Professor Nadia Pinardi gave in the morning, from trying to get a people-centered perspective on developing the new strategies, you mentioned the cultural differences, and that some of the cultural uses people do in the coastal communities, they might harm the environment. Nigeria, with so many ethnic groups, how do you manage, how do you talk to the different communities, and how is that important for the work you actually develop? Thank you again.
That is a very good question. In the presentation, I mentioned some of the stakeholders that are very critical in extending this innovation to the people. We use local leaders, we use opinion leaders, we use religious leaders, and also government that this are being backed up with the policy implementation with the government. Now, when you use local leaders, they listen to them, they listen to the local leaders. And it's really very important. That is why I also stress the point of stakeholders' participation in the co-designing process of this.
Great.
Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. That was very interesting. Okay. So the program says 10 minutes, but superior orders say that we will go on. So we now move to the next talk, which is the Netherlands Coastal Resilience Strategy and Vision by Gada El Serafi, Robin Gui, Loretta Cornacchia, Delta Rest, the Netherlands.
Hello.
Hello, everybody. My name is Robin Gui. I represent Deltares, which is a Dutch Knowledge Institute on water management. First of all, I would like to thank Nadia, Andrea, and the whole team for inviting us here today. We are very honored to be able to be here and to be able to also share some of what we do in the Netherlands, and most of all to hear and listen and learn from all of you today. So thank you for that also, and thanks for all the sharing so far. Yes, so as I mentioned, my name is Robin Gui. I work at Deltares. My background is in marine biogeochemistry, but I work in topics related to climate adaptation and coastal nature-based solutions. So I think hopefully what I have to share today is extremely relevant for what we are working towards in the UN decade for the ocean towards a resilient coast. Just a little bit about Deltares for those who don't know. We are considered young, 15 years old, but we're not that young actually. It's 100 over years of experience and expertise, and that's due to a merger of very old institutes in the past, old research institutes in the Netherlands and also governmental institutes, and we converged and became Deltares. So we are a foundation, we're not a company, and in that sense we also support the government in a lot of research, knowledge, and advice. And so some of the flagship projects that we are involved in also relates to some of the reclamation works, for example, building new dikes or building new islands in order to improve water quality in the Netherlands. And for this case also is that we do work globally as well. We have offices, branch offices all over the world, and we closely cooperate with many governmental and research institutes, like in the US, in Singapore, in Southeast Asia. We also work a lot with development banks as well. But enough about Deltares. What are we actually doing in the Netherlands? Today I wanted to share about the Dutch Coastal Resilience Strategy. What I wanted to share mainly pertains to, say, the main components of adaptation that we identify, which is research and knowledge, planning and implementation, and monitoring and evaluation. Not to say that we exclude the other components. I mean, of course, knowledge building, capacity building, knowledge sharing is very important, and I will touch a little bit on that later as well. But just for today, I will share a little bit what we are doing in relation to these points. So the Netherlands, it's in the name. It is very low-lying land. A lot of the country lies below sea level. Where we are situated is just a little bit north of Rotterdam, and that is already 2 meters below sea level. So the only reason I'm not coming to you here with wet feet is because we invest a lot in water management. So the Dutch have a very long history of living with and managing water. If you see a lot of the old photos, it is full of boulders, it is full of canals and everything. So a third of the country lies below sea level, and this means that water is at the center of everything that we do. Right? So it has very long history, and the thing about the Netherlands is that we have many different environmental systems, which means that the management that we do in the Netherlands is area-based. You have to treat each system like a whole environmental system. You cannot divide it into municipalities or provinces. If you do that, I don't think you will solve anything. And in this way also, it's very unique in the Netherlands in that each environmental system we tackle, we have a very unique consortium of interactions between public and private bodies, right? So who are the main players? It's not just, the state agencies, it is the local government also that is very involved. So today what I'll actually touch on is really the Dutch fight against rising sea levels. And in the Netherlands, it is a highly exposed coastline. Sea level rise is very important for us to tackle, because otherwise most of the country will be drowning, right? Now, how did large-scale water management come about in the Netherlands? We have to go back a little bit in history, and this has to do with a very, very devastating flood in the south of the Netherlands, in Zeeland, in 1953. Right? A lot of people died. Thousands of people died. Thousands of people had to be relocated. Houses were destroyed. And because of this, there was it was an existential crisis for the Netherlands to invest in large-scale water management. And out of this was born the Delta Works, which is very, very, very large-scale gray infrastructure solutions. And this has to do with a huge amount of dams, sluices, and movable storm surge barriers. So it's an enormous amount of effort to be able to combat a storm surge and sea level rise and large-scale coastal flooding. Just for reference also, the Delta works cost the Dutch government 5 billion euros. Until today also, there are recurring costs every year for maintenance and knowledge uptake and knowledge insights. So this is, adaptation is not cheap, let's be honest. So just some pictures also of the Delta works, and this is, you'll find these movable barriers in the east, the southeast of the Netherlands. It's quite famous because every year when we have the first storm event, we have a bicycle race across this barrier. It's against, the winds, and it's actually mainly to highlight how strong these storms can be also. What is also maybe a bit impressive is the Maasland barriers. So these are also movable. These are meant to deal with 1 in 10,000 year storm events. We trigger these barriers once every few years. And it's also more for maintenance. And I cannot remember the last time we closed it actually, but this is the scale of investment that the Dutch is doing also, just to protect everybody. Now, so that was like the old strategy, right? So the grey infrastructure and sort of the reactive solution to coastal flooding. What are we doing today? We actually have this motto, grey where needed, green where possible. Sometimes you have to come to terms with the fact that you cannot use green solutions for everything, right? So what do? In the previous photo also, you see these like dams and sluices and barriers. Those are the basic protective infrastructure we invest in. And then where we can, we have green solutions, right? So from the 1960s, we invested a lot of attention into this, for ecosystem restoration, for biodiversity. And also, if you think about it, there's a lot of secondary benefits from green solutions that you can reap for the economy and for society. And so we put a lot of attention into this, and this made way also for really large-scale projects, right? So we have Room for the River, which is, here you see the before and the after. And this is just one section. Our rivers are really, really long. This is just one example. And then we also invest in salt marsh restoration, so managed realignment. This is more in the north of the Netherlands. We have also, you don't see it well here, but this entire area is the integrated dike and dune construction. So it looks like a dike outside. Inside, we reinforce with a sheet pile so that's the gray where needed and then green where possible. And then lastly, which maybe this is a bit famous, we have the SEN engine, which serves as a natural coastal nourishment strategy for the next 30 years. I mentioned adaptation is not cheap, and I'm going to highlight why. The SEN engine project cost the Dutch government 70 million euros, and this is only one section of the coast. Room for the River project, 2 billion euros. It is not cheap. It is not cheap. But that is why also there's so much attention to focus on green solutions also where we can. Because let me tell you, the SEN engine right now is supporting a lot of very essential and protected birds. It is also actually nourishing the beach dunes behind it. So there is a lot of secondary benefits that everybody is reaping from this. And above all, it is promoting tourism. So thousands of people go to this location also just to see birds, just to see specific species. And Room for the River project. This is amazing because we have willow trees also that planted all along the rivers that reduce the impacts of flooding. And we have protected areas now that are more enriched with biodiversity and better ecological status. So how do we make this possible? We have something called the Delta program in the Netherlands. And this is the best possible picture I can find to encapsulate what the Delta program is. The Delta program is a very unique ecosystem. I say ecosystem because it's a very strong interaction between the knowledge and research institutes and the decision makers. And how we do this is that every year we have a report that we update, but there are regular meetings with the decision makers and the experts to continuously ensure that we have a strong uptake of the latest available knowledge and science into the decision making. So the Delta program, it is if I get my numbers right, it costs 50 billion euros to last until 2050. Only 30 billion euros is currently funded until 2050, which means we need 20 billion euros more. And this is not just for knowledge and research, this is for the infrastructure solutions also that we need to invest in. And that's the thing with adaptation. You have to think in a very long-term strategic manner, and you already have to flag up any barriers and obstacles you come across. So this is a very unique way of managing the entire delta in the Netherlands. It is costly, but it is reaping a lot of benefits at this moment, because then all the experts are able to immediately feed back to the decision makers on what the best possible decision is to take. Now, I talked a lot about what we're doing in the Netherlands, and I thought it would be good to also highlight what we are doing internationally. Right? And so this is then the knowledge sharing and the capacity building aspect of things. What we have is a Dutch initiative, but it is not, I wouldn't say it's owned by the Netherlands, but it's just an initiative that the Netherlands started. It is called the International Panel on Deltas, Coasts and Small Islands. And that's because these are the most vulnerable locations in the world from sea level rise and increased storm surge, etc. And what this project is to close the adaptation gap by unlocking climate financing. And the main reason is to accelerate climate adaptation in order to achieve socially equitable adaptation in the future. It is a very, very big initiative. So we have, for example, the Asian Development Bank on board, we have the Green Climate Funds on board, Inter-American Development Bank, and also the World Bank on board. On top of this, we have 16 member countries split between developing and developed countries also. And the project runs until 2030, right? But we also need to consider what's going to happen after 2030. So the main thing within IPDC is that we invest a lot in trying to train the current generation of experts and decision makers to understand how to gain access to climate financing. And as you know, climate financing is not the easiest to gain access to. If you look at GCF, the amount of financing that they provide, up to 400 million euros per project, how would you even gain financing into that, right? So there's something we try to do within the IPDC. And aside from that also, there are country-specific strategies or action points that each country would like to take on. For example, a lot of focus on perhaps public-private participation or social outreach, or maybe even a specific project, a small-scale adaptation project. So this is what we try to do for the IPDC. We are working towards a conference in March, a flagship conference, and also working towards the COP29 to be able to share the insights and the progress also of this project. The next one is EcoShape. Now, EcoShape, I think a lot of people up front will say, wait, isn't that a Dutch initiative? Yes, it is a Dutch initiative, but with global projects. So we do projects in Suriname, Indonesia, and Bangladesh, and a whole bunch of other countries as well. But it's a very unique partnership between public and private sector. And this is very unique because this, you don't see this happening very often. And a lot of people say, well, we work with industry. No, this is really large scale. It's 20 over partners in a consortium. And it's only focusing on pre-competitive work so that, when it comes to competition, people will go their own ways and, apply for tenders themselves. But here we have a very unique partnership, and we believe strongly that you reap the best benefits by working together. And the last one that I would like to touch on also is what active international networks we have. I think some of these are quite familiar to most of you, maybe, if you work in a European context. So in terms of observation, we have a lot to do with Eurocruise, Coast Predict, GeoBond, GEOS, GeoEcoWatch, and also the World Water Quality Alliance. That's more from a modeling perspective also. We also have long-standing alliances and research partnerships under EMODNet, the European Marine Observation Data Network, and also ocean prediction that we are a part of and chairing the Northeast Atlantic region. And then from the research and knowledge perspective, that we are hosting the IPCC Working Group 2 Technical Support Unit. And that we also have the NUS Deltares Knowledge Alliance, where we work together with Singapore National University to serve as a platform, actually, for elevating knowledge and working with decision makers also. I think that is all I would like to share with today. And if you have any questions, please feel free to approach me. Feel free to ask right now. And you can always contact us if you have any questions. Yeah.
So, if there is any questions, please.
Yes. Can
I
So, I have to read it because it's so well written. So, I'd like to ask your comment on the phrase, not every element of the natural world is destined for preservation.
I try my best. I come from a small island state, Singapore. And if you see with a lot of other small island states, for example, the Maldives, if you are aware of the latest strategy, which is to unfortunately allow some islands to sink, basically flood and sink and lose the natural system to the effects of climate change. It is very unfortunate, I think, and it is a true statement. It will happen. There are costs that come with, it's a consequence of the actions that humans have undertaken, right, in the past few decades. This is part of what will happen. This is the consequence. What can we do? Yes, it's strategizing right now. I think it's the time to take action. It is no more talking. How else can I hope with the UN decade, this is, the time for action. We will lose these natural systems, but what we can preserve, we should do our best to protect.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think this session is about hope, no? I think everything is being, but you have to sacrifice something. That's true. Okay, so the next talk is by Loma Veronica Inés from IOC UNESCO in Colombia, and the title is Perspectives on Coastal Management and Resilience in the Caribbean. Please.
Thank you very much.
Down arrow to go forward.
Okay. Down arrow. It's a pleasure to be here and to hear your presentations. There's been some very stark differences, of course, between what we heard in the morning and maybe what we just heard from the Netherlands and where we come from in the developing world. And of course, the Ocean Decade is of course supposed to try to bridge that gap, but it's not as easy as it sounds. Okay, so I'll just introduce you briefly to the Eo-Caribe region and talk about coastal management and resilience as we try to do it in our region with the few resources that we have. And the challenges, of course, are well known, but I've put them in there. And then I identify a small island developing state in the Caribbean that I think has been doing it right for quite some time. And when I heard the presentation of Rimini this morning, I realized, well, some small countries have actually been able to do pretty well. So this is the Eo-Caribe region, and you can see that we're bounded by two very large countries, Brazil and the US. And then we have the narrow peninsula of Central America, and those medium-sized countries in Northern South America. But then we have over 2,000 islands and islets and cays in the Caribbean. And this makes regional ocean governance quite a challenge. Just to say then that, I think that I've been, okay. Yes, so what we decided to do was to take an ecosystem-based approach to management, and that is very strong in the region. I think every country understands what that means. And we did a transboundary diagnostic analysis as countries. I was representing a country at the time, and we came up with 3 issues, very strong. Before we started talking about the triple planetary crisis, we were talking about pollution, habitat degradation, and overfishing. And these were the things we wanted to address in our 10-year strategic action program. But there was one additional one that was added. At the time, there were people from all over the world coming into the Caribbean to do projects. And it was just a hodgepodge of all kinds of activities going on. The countries were confused. Many times we didn't have access to the data. Sometimes we didn't even see the reports. And the countries said, enough. We need to reduce the fragmentation of ocean governance. So with that, let's see. This is not moving? Okay, there we go. Right, there we go. So with that, we began to prioritize in the region the sustainable development goals that support the economy of the region. And those are the environmental, what we call the environmental goals. So you've got environment at the bottom, you've got society, and then you've got economy on top. Each of these having its own, requiring its own level of resilience based on the one below it. Now, what the Ocean Decade is proposing, in my view, this is just my perspective, is that Goal 17, partnerships, perhaps should be under the one at the bottom. So we start with the partnerships across the board, and then we begin to build up the others. So what we did in the region with this fragmentation of ocean governance was to come up with an ocean governance coordination system, mechanism that would support our countries. And you see, it includes the Regional Seas Program, which has a legally binding convention that most of the countries now have signed. We've got 2 more left. We've got the 3 regional fisheries bodies. We've got the large marine ecosystem, 3 programs that cross the Eo-Caribe region. And we have all of the relevant UN agencies and intergovernmental organizations across the region. We also have some of the regional political bodies that have joined that mechanism so that we can begin to talk as a group together. This has taken us a while, but we're getting there. We know what our countries want. They want the recreational opportunities on the coast, the clean water, the nutrient cycling. We have a lot of rich biodiversity, but we're losing it. We know this. We want sustainable fisheries. But then we have to deal with the multiplication of the human impacts in our region as well. So across the region, we're comfortable to consider our resilience in terms of hazards. We don't have a choice because we live with them all the time, every year. So we have what we call our 5 natural lines of defense: the coral reefs, the barrier reefs, the fringing reefs. The seagrass beds are not a big barrier, but they help if they're in place. And the beaches and dunes and the mangroves. The resilience of a beach. I just picked one because I know I don't have a lot of time to speak. So this beach was listed as one of the top 10 beaches in the world in Barbados for several years. One morning we woke up and it looked like this. That's the way it goes, not just in small island developing states, but in the Caribbean, where there are so many hazards that sometimes they just pile on top of each other, and we can hardly even manage to decide what to address first. So addressing coastal management and resilience in our region is overwhelming. And that's why we're so happy to have partners now. And the size and the number of elements we deal with, the technical and human resources capacity. Sometimes we know what to do, we just don't have the number of hands to do it. Technological change. You know, I listened to the presentations this morning on AI, and I'm thinking, well, we haven't even gotten to the previous 10 levels. Impacts are multiplying as we're trying to do this. For poor and for small states, the question is it even possible? So I want to answer that question using the Barbados as the case study. So this is Barbados again, after a hurricane. I don't know if you can see the tourists that are kind of perched up on top this where this beach used to be. And following a hurricane, we lost more than 100,000 cubic meters of sand on this beach. Now this beach is on what we call the Platinum Coast, where more than 30% of the economy of this little tiny island of Barbados is generated. So when something like this happens, it's major. We have, of course, pollutant issues, and some of them are quite significant. We have an estimated increase by the year 2025, but we've started working on this. We've got solid waste, but we've also got 80% of the raw sewage from our 29 member states going into the Caribbean Sea. They cannot afford sewage treatment plants. We heard about that this morning. So as a result, our reefs are going from healthy to pretty much dead. We've got foreign invasive species. We've got I think that has stopped for the most part. In most countries, the sale of corals has stopped. But every now and again, it still happens, and we know it. So, and then, of course, we've got visitors who walk on the reefs. We've got discharges from factories that create algal blooms. We've got multi-million-dollar yachts that come down from rich countries, and they drop their anchor on the reef, and they drag. The weight of the boat drags the anchor and destroys a reef. These things happen every day. So Barbados decided to fight back. Now, Barbados is 430 square kilometers, 290,000 people. We're talking really, really tiny here, okay? But, and you might say that the Barbados program started with the European Union decision, and it did. World Trade Organization, free trade, no more preferential rates for sugar and bananas in the region. So Barbados and the other islands had to reconfigure their economies, and they've switched to tourism. In the late 1970s, these new tourism developers came to government and said, our beaches are disappearing. This is what we have been selling on the international market. If our beaches are not there, how are we going to do this? Government had no clue where to start. So they embarked on the Barbados Coastal Conservation Program with the Inter-American Development Bank. And this was their mission. So if you go back to the Sustainable Development Goals, they wanted to make sure that not just the physical or the environmental aspects were covered, but they were going to focus on the social as well. I have 4 minutes to finish this case study. Now, the first thing they did was to understand. They wanted the evidence base. Government said, we need all the information on our coastal and marine environment. And I think that was what really made the difference in the program. This is based on high-resolution bathymetry, which the majority of countries in Latin America and the Caribbean do not have. And then they wanted to know about the threats. to the coastal and marine environment. So they needed to understand the wave climate that would impact on that little dot in the Caribbean called Barbados. And then they began to look for solutions. Numerical modeling to understand what solutions would work in the coastal zone and which ones would not. And the hurricanes. They always come, they have to be factored in. So the first task was an integrated coastal zone management plan that then led to a regulatory process for any kind of infrastructure development on oceans and coasts. And that was a very rigorous program. Along with that, they began to focus on some of the challenges that I dealt with, the biodiversity, the restoration, etc. But what happens when all of those green opportunities, options, policies fail? When the beach still is not coming back, that lovely beach is still not coming back, then we have to go to the gray, like we heard. And this is what Barbados did when all else fails. So you have, with all the science that they had, they were able to do excellent numerical and physical modeling of each beach that they were planning to intervene on. They would monitor the beach first. Is it coming back on its own? Is it resilient enough to come back on its own? Is it coming back fast enough? Climate change will, sea level rise and other issues will slow it down, but is it coming back? If it's coming back, then we don't intervene. But if it's not coming back, then we have to do something, because we're too small. This is our economy. We either have it or we don't. And so their last resort is coastal engineering, but the how. We have many projects in the Caribbean in coastal engineering that have actually created more problems than they have solved because of the lack of high-resolution bathymetry, understanding the wave climate, understanding the extreme events that will impact on the structure that you're putting in place. Barbados, before a single rock goes into the water, they have already spent $250,000. That sounds really low when you hear the numbers that were being discussed today. But remember, this is an island, and the entire economy is probably 12 billion US, if so much, with 100% and 60% debt. And so it is significant. And so this is then the architect's rendering of the project before anything is done. And then when it's finished, just like you said, we try to make it multifunctional. Whoops, I'm sorry. Make it as multifunctional as possible. Multifunctional. This is a shoreline stabilization structure, a revetment structure underneath, and then this is the next one is the last one. And then we have the boardwalk on top. The next project is this one, where the coastal road between the airport and the main capital was being undermined little by little, because this beach used to be over here, as wide as that. And then it began to undermine the road. We realized eventually the road is just going to fall in one day. So again, significant numerical and physical modeling, followed by construction, and this is the beach that we have today. Now, Barbados, 30 years ago, when we were still fighting among countries within the Kyoto Protocol, this is way before the Paris Agreement was even conceived, Barbados was fighting for climate change to be recognized globally, and Barbados was a leader in that. Barbados began to incorporate the elevations, the predicted elevations coming from the IPCC for sea level rise into its projects. As a result, we factored into our budgets maintenance for the structures that we would build every 5 years. But we have structures in Barbados that have been built 25 years ago and have never needed maintenance because of how stringent the government has been in ensuring that they were constructed, that they were designed first, and then constructed in the way that, that they needed to be. At the regional level, we're going to continue to support our countries in moving in this direction, in sharing best practices in coastal management and resilience like this. We do have a lot of best practices in biodiversity conservation and management. But when it comes to the physical oceanography and the physical modeling, the region is weak. And we are building a multifunctional ocean observation network that will support a multi-hazard early warning system for the region. We're going to need your help. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Questions, please?
Thank you for the presentation. Actually, you are defining yourself now not a small island state, but a large ocean state, because your EZ, your economic exclusive zone, is much larger than the land that you're using. So, in this sense, how do you consider the maritime spatial planning as a tool useful also for coastal zone protection?
It's one of the tools that that the small island developing states of the Caribbean are very anxious to work on, particularly as they move towards what they're talking about in relation to sustainable blue economy. They need help. They're struggling with the concepts, they're struggling with the methodologies, and more importantly, they're struggling with the co-design. So this is one of the tools that we at the regional level, particularly in IOC UNESCO, we want to be able to support them. We did a workshop last year to present it, and the islands were ready to go. But we need funding, we need technical capacity to support.
First of all, thanks a lot for the presentation. I also come from South America, Latin America. I come from Brazil, so I know the struggles on what is to do science, what is to install an equipment that sometimes we don't have, the financing that we don't have. When you showed the slide of the legally binding partnerships and projects that you have, at some point, my brain kind of divided it into colonizers and ex-colonies. So my question would be, does historical reparations enter in the discussions when you are planning for climate funding? And if they enter in the discussions, how do they enter so?
I think you would have heard the Prime Minister of Barbados in the last few days call for, what was it, $4.9 trillion? She was talking to Prince Charles. It's only at that level that the conversation around reparation comes up. At our level and the technical level, we're all about solving problems today for our populations today. We can't depend on somebody finally saying yes to Prime Minister Motley or anybody else on reparation. We need to begin to find small or medium-scale solutions, coast by coast. We want to just get through and get the job done. So that's what we do. Yes, ma'am.
So thank you, Lorna, because it's amazing to see how important you place the partnerships in your work. And this is something that we have to learn in the developed countries, so to speaking, because fragmentation of our efforts is one of the reasons why things don't work. And so we should take the message of SDG 17 as being really our top priority, I think, in all our actions. Thank you for reminding this. But more than that, I just wanted to add a comment. You just said we have to do AI, and I strongly support this. I think even more than I did 6 months ago. And I think that you don't need to go through the whole piece that you haven't done. This is the strength of these digital technologies. You don't need to do the history before you can access them. So my message is, and will be iterated by Giovanni here, is that in our global coast, we need to undertake the jump directly to the digital setting that allows everybody to access the technology that is required without being local in that technology. And it is possible.
Well, that gives me a lot of hope. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Thank you for a presentation, Lorna. Very interesting also for the interstate governance effort that in the Caribbean area we are pushing and putting in place. And it was interesting also for the intervention of restoring the beaches, and the question is about this practical question about how the sand went back to the beach, naturally bounced by the sea, or you nourished the beach, and in this case where you find the beach, the sand for the beach's nourishment.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for the question. In some cases, I think they've done about six projects now. In the first case, what we considered a sand source was minimum 2 miles offshore and minimum 3 meters of sand deep. Because if you had that amount of sand in one area, that depth of sand, then it meant that there was a sediment source that was feeding that particular point, and therefore you could take from it for the nourishment and not inadvertently create other problems. So the first time we did that, what the modeling and the design work is doing now is trying to find creative ways to reconnect the natural along-shore sediment transport processes where the sediment is enough that is coming along shore to actually nourish the beaches. In some cases, the sediment is no longer enough. I'll just tell a slight story, forgive me. For many years, the Barbados Coastal Zone Management Program was focused on the coral reefs because we thought that sand was the weathering of the coral reefs. It turns out, in one of our projects, we had an international consultant, and he taught us that most of the white sand that we have, that fine-grained sand, it actually comes from coralline algae, which we knew nothing about and we were doing nothing to protect. See, that's why the science is so critical. So now there's a push to ensure that we protect this coralline algae as best we can. Well, I say we, but I'm no longer there. I'm now at the regional level, but you understand what I'm saying. So the push now is to do less nourishment and more to design to ensure that the beach returns naturally. They also do the physical models and run scenarios for hurricanes, which come through every summer. Category 1, Category 3, Category 5. How is this beach going to behave under those conditions. And then they, that's why the beach normally stays where it's supposed to stay. Yes, sir. Finally, one more, okay.
And now we come to the last talk before the coffee break, which is From Detection to Action, the Indian Tsunami Early Warning System by Sunanda Manila, because INCOIS in India, that's the organization. Please.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Sunanda Manila. I work for the Tsunami Warning Center. It's been kind of 12 years. I've been, okay, is it now? Okay. Okay. I would like to give the story of the Indian Tsunami Early Warning Center. It's a kind of what was before 2004 and how we emerged after the 2004 and where we are now. It's working. Yes, that's this. Yeah.
Yeah, and then the light is this.
Okay, got it. Thank you. So to start with the vulnerability of the Indian coastline. So if you see that it's kind of 250 million of Indian population reside within the 50 kilometers of the 7,500 kilometer coastline. So it starts from here and it's over here and it ends over here. So it's a kind of a country itself, in the European country itself is in this coast. And then comprising 77 towns and including the major cities are like the Mumbai and the Chennai and the Kolkata here. So these are the metropolitan cities which has a huge development here, and especially when it's a economic capital of the Mumbai over here. Then a report released by this Intergovernmental Panel on Climate Change says like 12 coastal cities will be submerged by this end of the century. And we are prone to frequent cyclones, especially the frequency has increased recently. Because we do have in both regions, especially we used to have many cyclones in this Bay of Bengal, and now we see the pattern in the Arabian Sea also. There are many cyclones these days, and these floods, droughts, and yeah, you name the disasters, the frequency has increased very recently. So what do we do? This is our organization, Indian National Center for Ocean Information Services. So our mission is to provide the ocean information and advisory services to the society, industry, government agencies, scientific community through sustained ocean observations and the constant improvements through the systematic and focused research. So it's kind of like we provide our services whoever is dependent on the sea, and their livelihood is dependent on the sea, and the economic and in industries who are depending on the sea, and all the coastal populations, and then the Navy, Coast Guards, Marine Police. So for everybody we are providing our ocean information services. So these information services include like in the previous presentations where there was EC, MR, MWF. It's a similar kind of services we provide to the Indian coast population and the other stakeholders. So these were the services we used to provide and we still provide, but the story changes over here in 2004. So this, like not only India, I think most of the Indian Ocean countries kind of era before 2004 and after 2004. So this is an example of one such country, India, what happened and in 2004 and then how we emerged. So this is a magnitude of 9.1. I know you all know about this, but just wanna give that how huge it was and what was the reason for the huge loss there. And this is the third strongest magnitude of 9.1 hit 14 countries, and it's a huge loss. And the reason for this is like in the Indian Ocean, so many countries do not know this term tsunami itself, and of course then we do not have any programs for this prevention and mitigation. And though we had programs for other coastal hazards, but there is none for the tsunami. So, and this has also played a major role, the ignorance of the natural science during this tsunami. So, this is the kind of like what happened in 2004. And of course, again you all know, but I just wanted to say like what are the major sources for this tsunami. So like earthquakes, usually they make 82% as a reason, and then comes the submarine landslides at the coastal landslides and volcanic eruptions and a meteoroid impact. So we all in the Indian Ocean, at least it's our know like what to do for this earthquake source tsunamis, and then we prepared our tsunami warning system based on these 4 pillars: the disaster risk knowledge, and which we like for example in case of India, whether we know which areas are under risk, whether people know their vulnerability status, and then the detection, observation, the monitoring, whether we do have the early warning system, whether we can provide the warnings to the stakeholders based on the scientific research. And then this, the third pillar, the warning, dissemination, the communication. And these results, what we do at the warning center, are reaching the disaster management officials, and from there these results are going to the public. And then when this public receive the information, whether they are able to understand this information, are they able to respond to that. So this is the kind of 4 pillars we have built our warning system. And then when I see this UN early warnings for all, yes, we did this long before on these 4 pillars, the Indian Ocean, Indian National Tsunami Warning Center. So start with the risk analysis. So the pillar 1. So we identified like where are these tsunami-genic zones in the Indian Ocean to start that. So for that we have identified like there are 2 tsunami-genic zones in the Indian Ocean. This is Andaman Sumatra subduction zone, and then this is Makran subduction zone. This is a kind of around 6,000 kilometer of length, starting from Himalayan almost ending at the west, this Australia. And then this is the Makran subduction zone, which is of 900 kilometers, and it starts from the Iran and the Pakistan. So this is the kind of the first step to identify what are the major subduction zones and from where we might get this tsunami in the next. And then we did the analysis of this tsunami travel times and the response times based on like we generated many thousands of scenarios, and this is an example of the 2004 tsunami. Like if the earthquake happens again over here. So these contours are the travel times. This is every contour is of 30 minutes. So if earthquake happens over here, so how long it takes to reach, these are the Andaman Nicobar Islands, and then this is the Indian mainland. So if earthquake happens here, so it takes around like 20 to 30 minutes to reach this coast, and then it takes 2 to 3 hours. And similarly, if an earthquake happens here, and then it takes 2 to 3 hours. So this is the kind of analysis we did for all the major earthquakes over here and over in this subduction zone, and identified like how much response time we have as a warning center to warn the people. And then based on that, we have created the tsunami vulnerability mappings in the 1:25,000 ratio and 1:5,000 ratio, identifying the low risk, high risk zones based on the satellite imagery and the surveys we have done over this. This is the 2D maps we have created for most of the regions in the eastern and western coast of India. And then the pillar 2 is the detection warning, and for that what do we need? So that's what we did the first analysis. We have to establish a seismic network and then a robust communication system, and then should have a data on the bathymetry and the topographic data, so that we can have this forecast models and then vulnerability maps. So this is the second pillar we established then, and for that we established the seismic and the GNSS network. So we initially started with the 17 seismic stations, and then we started receiving around 350 international stations which are open network, and then we again established 150 seismic stations, and then 400 continuous operating reference stations. Of course, right now we are not using these stations exactly for the, not only for the tsunami early warning, but for other purpose too. And then we are able to estimate any earthquake parameters. If any earthquake happens over here in this region in the near to the Andaman Nicobar Islands, it is taking 3 to 5 minutes. And because of the dense network we have over here, and then if it happens anywhere in the Indian Ocean, we are taking 8 to 10 minutes to detect that kind of earthquake. And then we have established a very dense network here in the Andaman Nicobar Islands of the 30 GNSS stations. This is the, I told you, like this is the subduction zone we have over here. So right on top of that we have established for the fast characterization of the earthquake and to see whether it's going to generate a tsunami or not. And then we do have the DART network, deep ocean tsunami assessment. There's a bottom pressure recorders in the Indian Ocean. Again, we have established 7, and then the tide gauge network of 36. And then we are now in this year establishing 14 more to make it a 50 tide gauge stations. And then the tsunami modeling, as I told you, like we have a huge database of the tsunami propagation scenarios. And these red dots, if you see here, these are actually, we call them as unit sources, which are of 100 by 50 kilometers length, just to see like maybe if 7.5 earthquakes happen over here. So what is the travel time and what is the wave height estimated from this, and how long it takes to reach the Indian coast. So this kind of scenarios we have generated around 50,000, and then we do have another technique which we use the scale up and scale down based on the 7.5 magnitude for the immediate forecast. And then we have this is the Earth Tsunami Warning Center with the big screens, and this operates 24/7 with we do have high performance computations, and we are in right now doing like real time forecast modeling testing using these high performance computations, and then the advanced communication infrastructure for the dissemination of the information. And then the most important, the warning, dissemination and the communication. So for this actually to say like how we disseminate our information and whether everybody knows their role exactly what they have to do in this emergency case. So that's how we established this warning chain, we call it. So this is NTWC, that is our organization, National Tsunami Warning Center, and then the information during this emergency will go to the National Disaster Management agencies, and then it will go to the local disaster management officers, and then go to the public. So we would like to like make sure whether every element of this warning chain has SOP. If so, how we have to test it and see. So that's how this warning chain has been established. And then NTWC, yes, we do have the SOP, so it's in green, and then National Disaster Management has SOP, and the local disaster management has. These SOPs are for tsunamis, and not only for tsunami, it's a kind of a multi-hazard warning system at the level of local DMOs. And then we have this national SOP also for the media, and then, oh, I'm still very far away, so okay, I'll make it faster. And yeah, and this SOP is red just because like we have a very huge cost, and then we are having some programs with all these costs to develop some kind of emergency like dissemination of the information, and that's how like a few costs have already in place, and then still we are working with a few more costs. And then this is our warning system, which is a unique warning system based on the near source and the far source tsunami sources. And I won't go in detail because I have very less time here. And then we have what to do in case of warning, what to do in case of alert, watch, and threat passed. And then this is dissemination of the products. We use a website, and then we have a mobile app, and then these are the kind of products we disseminate and through all these media. And comes this fourth pillar, which is the preparedness and the response. We do have several programs, SOP workshops, which we like kind of address DMO's questions, how they have to build their SOPs, and then we conduct a tabletop exercises so that they can test how it has to be. And then we provide awareness materials in the local languages, and then we have several programs during this World Awareness Day on the 5th of every November. This is the latest development of the warning center, the coastal multi-hazard vulnerability assessments. So as I told you, we had the 2D maps generated during our risk assessment, and now we have developed them into the 3D maps, collecting this information, socio-demographic information of all the coastal areas. Especially right now we have concluded it for the most vulnerable areas, including like information of each and every household, like how many people reside in this house and what are the timings they are at home. So this kind of information is now shared with our disaster management officials, like during an emergency, like what are the areas they have to prioritize. This is our service as a tsunami service provider. This is like kind of along with Indonesia and Australia, we are providing the tsunami service advisories to all these countries in the Indian Ocean. So yes, like as I told you, like 82% of this tsunami is due to the undersea earthquakes, but there are some other reasons, like this is submarine landslide and volcanic eruptions. So these are the challenges right now we are concentrating, and we are working on that to how to address. So this is the right research to give these warnings as early as possible, though we have a very less like a kind of signals before these kind of events. So are we ready? Like it's been 20 years now since 2004 tsunami. Yeah, compared to 20 years back, of course we are in, I'm sorry. Yes. There's a great progress, including in all the ocean regions, and especially in the Indian Ocean region. If you see like what are the networks we had and then how improved now we are, and then as you yeah, yeah, time is done. I've kept myself alone. Okay, this is the program I just wanted to highlight. This is the Ocean Decade Tsunami Program, and then we are trying to improve our observation and the technological advances with the optimal networks, and the goal is to with achieving the 100% resilience to all the coastal regions. So that is all.
Thank you very much. So as we pass the time, we only have time for one question.
It's a tea time, maybe.
Just a brief question. Thank you very much. What is the major barrier to get the multi-hazard system in place? The multi-hazard early warning system, the one that we like. She was the one that started to call multi-hazard people-centered early warning system. So it's not me, it's she. Yeah. So what is the major advantage? Or the barrier, sorry.
Yeah. Okay, just a small story to come to multi-hazard early warning system. I think I missed one slide there about a program called Tsunami Ready in the Indian Ocean. Where we are doing it now. So to go to the multi-hazard, to say like there's a region in India which is regularly prone to the cyclones. So this was hit in 1999 during the super cyclone, and there was like kind of 10,000 people died over in that region. So when we brought this idea of the tsunami ready concept, the first people to understand, the communities to understand are the people from this region. They came forward and then they said, yeah, we would like to have this program for us. And see, they were hit by the cyclone and they were having this kind of resilient programs for the cyclones, coastal erosion, a kind of a coastal resilience for particular hazards. But when we went with the tsunami program, they were very much like already ready for this kind of hazard. So it's the multi-hazard is like you prepare for one hazard, especially in kind of oceanic hazards, and the people will, they themselves would be coming forward with the people-centered multi-hazard, as you said. Yeah, so that's how actually we have to have for every reason. Even if one coastal hazard, we prepare the people, I think there would be more with the people-centered multi-hazard early warning system towards approach they would start with then.
Thank you. Thank you, and thanks to all. We're going to coffee break, right? And there's an announcement.
Yeah, just a short one, if you can. We come back at 20 past so that we can, yeah, sharp.
this one because it's more
For
comfortable.
the speaker and for the chair?
For the chairman, this one is ready. We have to unmute it. Here you are. Now it's working. Tolta la scritta, bene. Metti fuori già la telecamera.
Okay. Let's go. One slide. Ah, my turn. Okay. It is the low one. Yeah. So good afternoon, and I don't want to be in the middle before your dinner and you visit to the museum. So I'd like to start the session. This is the fourth and last session. It's a blue session, la Squadra Azzurra. And then we will, my name is Bernardo Aliaga Rosell. I'm Chilean. I was born in '61, so I didn't witness the 1960 earthquake and tsunami, 9.5 magnitude earthquake in Chile. But for some reason, perhaps connected to that, I've been working on tsunami from 2004, actually. So I'm head of the Tsunami Resilience Section, and at the same time, by the same token, I'm Technical Secretary of the Global Sea Level Observing System. So I support the group of experts of sea level. We have 4 colleagues to present this session that goes from legal aspect through stakeholders' participation and ownership in the process of observing system and working towards resilience. New science being rising, and then an integrated approach. And I think that this is probably a good session to put an umbrella over what we have been listening today. So for the first one, we have Madame Greta Tellarini from the University of Bologna.
Good afternoon to everyone. Thank you very much for the invitation. Today I would like to address the issue of integrated and sustainable coastal management by providing you with a legal framework at an international, European, and national level. The creation of a new concept of coastal zone greatly facilitates regulation and administrative activities for environmental protection, safety in the dual meaning of safety and security, and above all, the development of maritime traffic and related activities, as it makes it possible to have a unified discipline encompassing marine and land areas. The notion of integrated coastal zone management was consolidated at the international level in the wake of the Coastal Zone Management Act introduced in the United States as early as 1972. The general principles contained in this legislation were later recalled in the 1992 United Nations Conference on Environment and Development in Rio de Janeiro. So the ICDM policy became a summit process outlined in Agenda 21, Chapter 17. What about Italy? This innovative coastal zone protection and management scheme has struggled, however, to penetrate the Italian environmental order in an organic manner. With a very innovative and modern vision, the law number 979 of December 1982, entitled Provision for the Defense of the Sea, called for the creation of a national coastal plan in the national system. Unfortunately, it was never implemented. And at an international level, the main legal source is the Protocol on Integrated Coastal Zone Management in the Mediterranean, signed in Madrid on January 2008, an implementation document of the Convention for the Protection of the Marine Environment in the Coastal Region of the Mediterranean, Barcelona Convention. The ICDM protocol drawn up within the framework of the United Nations Mediterranean Action Plan is therefore the first legally binding international instrument for the United Nations countries, even if concerning a regional sea. The protocol offers a definition of coastal zone as the geomorphologic area either side of the seashore in which the interaction between the marine and land parts occurs in the form of complex ecological and resource systems made up of biotic and abiotic components, coexisting and interacting with human communities and relevant socioeconomic activities. And also the protocol offers a definition of integrated coastal zone management as a dynamic process for the sustainable management and use of coastal zones, taking into account at the same time the fragility of coastal ecosystem landscapes, the diversity of activities and uses, their interaction, the maritime orientation of certain activities and uses, and their impact on both the marine and land parts. What about Italy? The ICDM protocol was adopted in 2008 and also signed by Italy, which, however, has not yet ratified it. Italy is therefore neither formally nor directly bound at the international level to comply with the rules set out in the protocol. In the meantime, on September 2010, the European Council adopted decision number 631 of 2010 on the ratification of the ICDM protocol, which has therefore entered into force and is binding on the Union itself, thus officially becoming part of the acquis communautaire. This means that Italy, even if not directly obliged to apply its precepts, cannot implement acts that are clearly in conflict with it. Integrated coastal zone management has become such a priority for the European Union that this protocol, ratified by the European Union in 2010, becomes part of the European law with binding effects for all member states. Until then, only non-binding soft law measures had been produced within the European Union, and therefore with little effect, such as the recommendation of the European Parliament and of the Council of May 2002 concerning the implementation of integrated coastal zone management in Europe. The recommendation clearly states in its preamble at point 9, it is essential to implement an environmentally sustainable, economically equitable, socially responsible and culturally sensitive management of coastal zone, which maintains the integrity of this important resource while considering local traditional activities and customs that do not present a threat to sensitive natural areas and to the maintenance status of the wild species of the coastal fauna and flora. The Commission noticed in its communication of 2000 to the Council and to the European Parliament that integrated management of the coastal zone requires strategic, coordinated and concerned action at the local and regional level, guided and supported by an appropriate framework at the national level. In fact, the recommendation number 413 of 2002 specifies that member states should formulate national strategies and measures based on these strategies, and that each member state, in partnership with the regional authorities and interregional organizations as appropriate, should develop a national strategy or, where appropriate, several strategies to implement the principle for integrated management of the coastal zone. What about Italy? For the implementation of the 2002 European recommendation on ICDM, Italy has not developed a national ICDM strategy, or in any case, instruments similar to it. Therefore, it does not appear that Italy has developed policies equivalent to ICDM, but only the adoption of fragmentary coastal instruments. So there is a lack of activation of ICDM action at a central level in the face of the importance in the European context and the importance and the extension of the coastline. Even if there are positive examples of ICDM at a regional and a local level. In summary, the current integrated coastal zone management system in Italy has some critical issues, such as particular two critical issues. The first, the lack of ratification to date of the ICDM protocol so as to make it fully effective and binding in domestic law. The protocol is a tool to achieve sustainable development of coastal zone through rational planning of activities so as to prevent or reduce the effects of natural hazard, which may be caused by natural or human activities, to reconcile economic, social, and cultural development with respect for the environment and landscapes, and to preserve coastal zones for the benefit of present and the future generations. And the second, lack of a national coastal strategy or plan. Even if to date the regional ICDM plans are a good example of management, and also the CAMP coastal management project have given good results. CAMP are a coastal management project that can be presented by the member countries of the Barcelona Convention and be developed in pilot areas located in the Mediterranean, where integrated coastal zone management is the main tool to achieve sustainable development. Why could a national coastal plan be so important? Italy is among those member states that are seriously behind schedule and have not yet applied with the decree number 201 of October 2016 to implement maritime special plans by the deadline set by the directive number 89 2014, which establishes a framework for maritime spatial planning. According to the same directive, maritime spatial planning means the process by which the relevant member states authorities analyze and organize human activities in marine areas with a view to achieving ecological, economic, and social objectives. The implementation of maritime spatial planning must take place through the development of management plans for the 3 maritime areas identified by Italy, which provide for the spatial and temporal distribution of present and future relevant activities and uses of marine waters. These management plans are currently still at the approval stage. In the maritime planning process, essential elements are, in particular, are 2. The first, land-sea interaction, and the second, ecosystem approach. For the first, the assessment of land-sea interaction is very important to ensure full coherence between maritime land strategies and plans. On the other hand, there are clear links and interaction between marine and terrestrial areas, and their activities fall within the scope of integrated coastal zone management. And for the second element, ecosystem approach, following an ecosystem approach means taking into account the specificities of marine regions and their effects on the environment and natural resources. It consists of a strategy that promotes the conservation, sustainable and equitable use of land, water and living resources through their integrated management. In the European vision, maritime planning should aim to ensure potential negative impacts on the natural environment are identified and prevented at a much earlier stage in the planning process, and national maritime spatial management plans are consistent with existing national plans, for example, plan for energy or plan for climate change. It is therefore important to promote a national planning that is integrated. It must be achieved through a coordinated and inclusive approach of multiple management plans so that there is a single coherent framework within which to make the relevant decisions. In the European vision, the maritime spatial planning must also presuppose the concept of a sea system as an organic governance of needs with a view to sustainable development, and it must have adequate governance in enabling effective coordination through systemic, unified, and structured action so as to foster sustainable economic, social, and environmental development in full compliance with the Europe 2020 strategy and Agenda 2030. What about Italy? Italy has currently taken a few small steps in this direction, decided to set up a Ministry for Civil Protection and Sea Policies, which is unfortunately only recognized as having a role in guiding and coordinating all sea-related activities, since sea-related competencies have been retained by the various ministries and have not been transferred to the new ministry. To this end, the Council of Ministers has also approved the creation of an interministerial committee for sea policies with the task of ensuring, without prejudice to the competences of the individual administration, the coordination and definition of the strategic direction of sea policies. For the future, this will allow the identification at national level of a planned, integrated and coordinated maritime policy in harmony with European policies, ensuring an overall vision of national maritime interests, which until now has been lacking. The first goal that the Committee for Sea Policy set itself was to draft a sea plan published last October, a strategic political document which addresses various issues related to the sea resource. It is certainly a document that at the moment has not been able to address all the existing problems, but which constitute the first step towards creating a new awareness and attention to the sea issues. Thank you very much.
Thank you. You save us 3 minutes. So we have time for one question. No questions? Nadia?
Thank you for the great recognition of the steps that are needed for international agreements to get into law in Italy. And my question is, so why are we so slow to achieve understanding, and what are the barriers between, the economic status of our country that depends on the coastlines and the sea for its survival, and the legislator that, what is the major barrier? Because we need to maybe undertake a special path for removing that barrier.
It's a very difficult question because there is this bias between the situation, the importance of, for example, of sea economy and the political decision, and so the decision of the legislator. So it's, I think, now we made some important steps, but I think we can do more. And so, but the problem is the political decision and the political government.
May I comment just to answer to your question, which is the most, I will tell you in Italian, then I will try translation in English. Il benaltrismo. Benaltrismo means that we need more, no? So the plan, the Maritime Special Plan is prepared since 1 year. So the comment is that is not enough. The process has been done involving 5 ministers, 17 regions, discussion lasting 2 years. So some of you in this room were part of the discussion, and then it's still blocked for the environmental strategic environmental assessment, which is not enough. The benaltrismo is the main barrier in this country. So we need more, even when all the process has been done. And I may assure you that the Italian plan, what has been done in the proposal for the discussion, is not the worst one in Europe. But somebody say that we need more, and the benaltrismo is the real barrier. This is my opinion.
Very good. So we have now Alberto Forte with a different perspective. yachting tourism as a potential trigger of coastal resilience. Want to speak from here?
Yeah, I'm going to speak from here. Thank you. Okay, I was asked to sit down, so I take advantage of the comfort of the chair to actually sit down. Thank you for having us. Alessia Mariotti couldn't be here with us today. She's going to be here tomorrow. So I'm going to represent our project. Let us bring some softness into coastal resilience with a human geography view on the relationship between the coast, the tourism, and the coastal resilience. Today we are presenting an element actually of our research project originally titled Back from the Sea. It aims at exploring the potential of novel forms of yachting tourism in reconnecting humans to the nature and culture of the sea, whilst acting possibly as an agent of change on coastal resort communities. The project originates from an understanding of the relationship between humans and the sea as one of division and separation. And this is due to a steady and progressive underexposure to its material nature. This is a concept that actually originated in 2008 from Philip Steinberg, who is somehow the father of he's somehow the father of this oceanic turn in cultural and social geography. More than focusing on best practices, we are going to illustrate a diffused and aspirational practice, or best practice, attempting to bring the sea back to landed life through yachting tourism activities of various sorts in the Adriatic Sea. We are going to go through a little bit of theory, just then to make sense later on what we found and actually what we observed. We would like to start off, let me see, I need to point it there probably. Narrow, yeah, the arrow up, doesn't work. It's not working. Okay, so I have to press tightly then, okay. It does what it wants. Okay, more or less here. Okay, we would like to start off with a chapeau, which facilitates our entrance in what is to come. It's May 2023, the very Italian Giornale della Vela, one of the two most popular dedicated magazines in Italy, publishes an article by Cesari titled "The Only Way to Make Sailing Popular Again is by Making It Fun." Well, Cesari made the point over the causes of a lack of generational continuity in sailing. His argument seems to suggest that all comes down to the univocal cultural exclusivity and fierce competition facilitated by the Italian Sailing Federation initiatives, the FIV. His arguments generated such a trial to sailing schools that the magazine decided to publish in June the long list of comments to Cesari's article. One that struck our attention was written by Mauro Pandimiglio. This one. Father of what is recognized in Italy as the experiential phenomenology of marine pedagogy, and goes thus. Thinking of sailing as a mere sport activity and competition is to reduce our life to nothing. We inhabit the sea with our boats, we honor our amphibious memory. There is nothing wrong with the sea racing or even the FIV initiatives. What's wrong is our viewpoint over the sea. The planet we inhabit is ocean. It is a continuous flow. Reducing it, splitting it into small segments and equally small cultural values is like reducing 3-mast vessels to a rescue skate. This quote brings attention to two related contemporary issues. Indeed, the reduction argument and the very idea of reversing the viewpoint have been at the core of our research since 2021. When we notice an unprecedented surge of interest in going by and being at sea, ignited by the recent COVID-19 pandemics. It is this turn to the sea through yachting that prompted an investigation into alternative views and practices that harmonize the human and natural dimensions and relocate the open sea, including its nature and culture, back at the center of processes of change in selected coastal areas. So we started to work on yachting tourism as a potential mean to reversing the point of view over the land-sea geophysical binary. A binary division that has determined the way the evolution of coastal resorts like Rimini has been managed. But you may wonder, what has this got to do with coastal resilience? Well, given the theme of this meeting, we decided to understand more of the perspective and the narrative put in place by those who have launched the call for coastal resilience. And we ended up here in the pages of the IOC UNESCO. We were struck by these two statements that you see on the slide as they resonated with the directions and the dimensions of our research endeavors. So besides the obvious call for making coastal community resilient to change, the role of ocean knowledge, ocean literacy, emphasis goes to reconnecting citizens deeply with the companion sea. And therefore, as a matter of context, we went back to resilience theory and tried to find the fit, or actually unravel the fit between this concept and the work we have conducted so far on the relationship between yachting tourism, a socio-ecological take on development, and coastal resort evolution. And what we found was a clear cut between two opposite viewpoints based on two distinct worldviews. On one side, engineering resilience, applicable to linear systems, context close to a single and stable equilibrium state where predictability is a key feature, and where constancy and robustness to disturbance lead the resource management agenda. On the other, there is ecological resilience with a derivative social ecological resilience type, which is the conception of resilience that shaped the definition of resilience formally adopted by the IPCC, a type of resilience that is applicable to complex adaptive systems like social ecological systems, where the ecological and the cultural dimensions integrate, they coalesce, they merge, where change is taken as a given, and therefore where the principle of adaptability enables the persistence of development trajectories. So where the ability to take opportunity of transforming replaces the goal of quick recovery and a back to normal agenda with renewal, regeneration, and reorganization following disturbance. Here, transformation seems to consist of three phases. The first and the second of which, probably the closest to our current state, calls to prepare the social ecological systems for change and use a crisis as a trigger for social change. Falk, one of the representatives of the Resilience Alliance Network, continues on the argument of building resilience for adaptability, whereby getting used to change, uncertainty, the need for renewal, reorganization, and learning by reconnecting humans and nature becomes paramount feature. On the argument of change, the social ecological resilience advocacy calls for social change as a prerequisite to remain in the Holocene, which has granted life to the biosphere up to the present moment, an argument that resonates vividly with the environmental sociology and ecology circuits, indicated that at the core of current environmental problems is the fractured relationship between the people and the living web of nature. In other terms, these problems are first and foremost social problems, rather than being purely environmental or even technological, and as such, they are essentially cultural. So, whereas reconnecting humans to nature emerge as key in building socio-ecological resilience, the named fracture seems enhanced by living in urbanized spaces, by living a landed life, by a landed value system, landed rules, landed rhythms, a landed conception of time and space that is, all in all, our normality as terrestrial beings. And this is despite living in a country, Italy, obviously we're talking for ourselves now, surrounded by 80,000 kilometers of liquidness. Duplessis echoes the quotes by the IOC UNESCO, seen in an earlier slide, whereby reintegrated humans with nature requires not just the integration of human technology into ecological processes, but the cognitive, emotional, and spiritual reconnections of humans to nature as a vital step to restoring both planetary health and the health of our societies. And going back to a few years ago, Capra, discussing the ecological self, claimed that if we have deep ecological awareness or experience of being a part of the web of life, then we will be inclined to care for all living nature. And it is at this stage that the argument of Steinberg concerning the issue with underexposure to the material nature of the sea due to decreased interaction of the ocean's material nature into our everyday lives becomes relevant and controversial. So the question remains as to how to facilitate then this deep reconnection and therefore vehicle this social change in order to build resilient socio-ecological systems. Is ocean literacy sufficient, for example? If we take the logical spaces, they should be designed to facilitate this quality of exposure to the material nature of the sea. The traditional seaside resort, here in the slide, featuring 2 generations of them. Exposure to the sea here has been contrived with resorts evolving by a design that was conceived from the land towards the seashore to satisfy landed goals and priorities, rather than being designed from an opposite point of view, that is, from the open sea towards the coast and its hinterlands, to serve or balance integrated human and ecological priorities. In this way, coastal resorts management as management of the urban milieu, has been complicit in fostering a progressive separation of humans from the nature and the culture of the sea. So it is this very view that we saw yachting tourism as a potential practice to reverse the viewpoint over the sea-land dichotomy. We have therefore spent some time at sea, in navigation most of the time, exploring this potential and investigated into the dynamics of yachting tourism and related initiatives by focusing on Rimini, or actually starting with Rimini, the North Adriatic and the Ionian microregion for both historic, geographical, and development reasons linked to the expansion of yachting tourism. And so we observed and considered for analysis a range of initiatives and programs directly related to yachting tourism put in place both by industry and the third sector organizations, which include those that you see here. So Appuntamento in Adriatico, Italy Viewed from the Sea, Discover Where I'm Taking You, both organized by Assonautica Italia and ENIT. Vela Libre, Il Mare in Movimento, a sailing association based in Rimini, aimed at disseminating the culture of the sea. Sailing for Blue Life and Sailing for Blue Lab, organized by Fondazione Cetacea Onlus and Aganor APS in collaboration with the various universities, and Progetto Mediterranea, a yearly cultural and scientific expedition in the Med region. All itinerant programs, they aim at bringing the sea back to the center stage in the life of participating citizens. And then the place is visited by navigation as well. Although in varied degrees, they champion the concept of reuniting with the sea, celebrating a return to and from the sea by holding strong socio-cultural and ecological undercurrents, and sharing the principles of a maritime culture of mutualism, cooperation, simplification, and transformation. This involves a deep human reconnection with life at sea, which is offered with a gradation of both cultural revival initiatives and ecological protection and restoration elements. So reviving marine intelligence and widening citizens' participation to advancing ocean science and inclusion in environmental education is key in most of them. By partnering up with the research institutes and agencies, sailing-based navigation skilling and citizen science become core practices in reviving this marine intelligence. This gives participants the chance to connect deeply with the sea by practicing, apart from sailing-based navigation with knowledgeable mariners, snorkeling and scuba diving-based ocean science with marine biologists. Bringing participants beyond the beach line and into the open sea, and then diving in beyond the sea surface acquires a key role to getting to see the sea with different eyes, and so contribute to reverting the viewpoint over the land-sea geocultural binary. The goal of reviving marine intelligence infuses most of these programs an intelligence that Mauro Pandemiglio, actually, the marine pedagogist that we met earlier on, illustrated in his book Modus Navigandi, where marine intelligence is described as an intelligence that humans hold inside and is activated by direct contact with the sea. Marine intelligence is close to the variability of nature and lives on prudency, prevention, and care for self and others. Moreover, it conveys a perspective change that reverses an established land-sea standpoint on life and reestablishes a long-gone sea-land viewpoint to then take the view of the sea. Reverting this relational order is key to constructing an oikos, a relational climate suitable to holding together all living systems. And all in all, in this view, sailing becomes an adaptation of our own psychosomatic system to a high level of unpredictability, where flexibility and openness to sudden change is necessary. And here is some evidence, some quotes that I selected from the several, actually, that we got regarding the effects of these programs on reversing the viewpoint over the land-sea geocultural binary. For example, this form of holiday aims at taking a distance from conventional landed dynamics as an opportunity to get into full contact with nature and the places visited from the sea. Overcoming the idea that the beach is the sea is a challenge. Few know that turtles and cetaceans populate the Adriatic. And this is mainly because only few ventures beyond the beach line. Beyond the beach line, there is a world that only few know of. Normally, people have no time or even the chance to get in contact with these things and reflect on the encounter. This is one of the biologists, actually, on one of the boats of these programs. And then, moreover, spending time at sea allowed me to stop and immerse myself in the marine rhythms, discover the sea as much more than just being by the seaside. And moreover, distancing from landed dynamics at sea, in navigation, there is the space and the time to feel deeply. On land, this is inhibited, suppressed, put on the side. On land, the priorities shift from those met at sea. The last one, the open sea is a space of silence where slow pace and constantly changing sea conditions lead to the contemplation and presence. And finally, can yachting tourism contribute to the social change needed in order to build a coastal resilience? In other words, does yachting tourism hold the potential to trigger coastal resilience as the resilience of socio-ecological systems? So the answer is possibly yes, but to a condition. And the condition is that yachting tourism products on offer feature sophisticated mix of encounters with and exposures to the culture and the material nature of the sea along the lines of those exposed so far. So what we saw is really, actually, and unfortunately, a micro niche in the market compared to more commercial and entertainment-based forms of yachting tourism asked for and offered by the charter industry that dominates the rules of the game, which is a game that we did not have the space to illustrate fully here, unfortunately. There are a few issues. Well, there are a number of issues, actually. One, these sort of experiences are obviously not for everyone's taste. The commercialization of the sea is fierce in this sector, and therefore, to answer these two questions, for yachting tourism to hold this potential, it should be reformed in a way that the diffusion of yachting tourism formats that trigger the resilience of social ecological systems are facilitated. After all, there are now offered what we saw. The examples that we saw are now offered predominantly by third sector organizations, and this says a lot in terms of the business model chose and the limitation of it. Thank you.
Thank you. Very stimulating, interesting presentation. I wish we can, at Broad in Cost Predict and with the DCC, we can map all the different initiatives. Already in Italy, there are many initiatives. In addition, I mean, you have done a very nice panorama of this initiative, but I think we need to gather them together because they exist, but they are fragmented again. And another aspect is citizen science that maybe can be emphasized because, of course, going with students and citizens, as well as animal tagging, which is a bit more controversial, but on sea turtles we started to do animal tagging to first of all to protect them and map where they go, understand their behavior, and I think it's also part of these initiatives. Thank you.
Thanks a lot. I reply, yes. Well, the funny thing is that when you look for evidence of a trend, you end up probably overemphasizing the elements that you want to emphasize and then undermine those that might undermine the trend itself. And what does this mean actually is that what I showed you is tentative attempts to change or to offer actually an alternative to what has become chartering in yachting. What I have discovered is that there is a new way of chartering that is dominated by the demand side that has no understanding of sailing or navigation. The only goal is as we say, as I am told in Italy, the only goal is about the level of raccontability, la raccontabilità of what happens, the amount of the storytelling, because people actually, what we, in a recent paper, we named the new charter tourist. This is how we define that individual, is only interested in having the aperitif off the coast, but with the coast in view, on the sunset, drinking, music, friends, etc. Okay, this is the dominant, this is the 70% of the market in the Mediterranean area, not only the Adriatic. What is interesting is that what I show you are very, very delicate attempts to offer an alternative to this. And I call them delicate and very fragile because the costs that are involved in owning and managing a boat are insane in Italy compared to places like France or places like Greece. And this is due to the fact that there is a mentality in Italy, or actually there is an association in Italy that put together luxury with yachting. And is so consolidated, also for historical reasons, that those who govern the sector struggle to get away from this. And actually it's not their fault. It is a system that works in this way. It's not the governments that decide for this. So for what I noticed in 6-7 months of navigating with these groups is that they really need the sector to reform deeply. And in order to reform, there has to be a shift in the reason why it exists. So for me, presenting this here today was a little bit of an off-topic compared to where we were going, because initially I was interested in regenerative development, But when I discovered that actually running the narrative of resilience, and for me it's a socio-ecological resilience, then maybe it can be a trigger in order to say, to tell the government, let's call it this way, and tell the system, yeah, okay, we can build a niche, and actually we can protect a niche, making less commercial, although there are costs and there has to be a revenue, making it less commercial, but allowing it to function in the way they should function in order to use the sea as an element of learning, to deal with change, for example. This is what you learn every day on sailboat. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Alberto. We have our last speaker talking about global coast, Giovanni. Over there.
So it's a pleasure to be here, and thank you for the invitation. I will present a cost predict initiative called Global Cost. It's a large effort, and I'm just presenting it and trying to help cost predict team to run it. So global cost will be built up. Sorry, I'm not sure the order of the. Yeah. So global cost is called also experiment or initiative. It's a way of demonstrating the cost predict aim of revolutionizing and transforming the science behind observing and predicting the ocean. So as you will see, we have organized global cost through pilot site, and I will present them to you. And in these pilot sites, we will demonstrate, implement and demonstrate the usefulness of an integrated observing and predicting system all over the global coastal ocean. And of course, the final aim is to create a globally replicable set of solutions, so through standards and application, of course, to enhance coastal resilience. And we want to also to make easier and fast and easy to collect the data, and especially model the environment, analyze the data, and make all these easy accessible and easy to use, and of course freely shareable. So just to, I add this slide just to give you the context of what we call value change of the global coastal ocean. So we start with observation. We focus on the regional and coastal area through the modeling. Of course, observation are satellite and in situ and citizen science or community science. The temporal scale, of course, is from short term to climate downscaling. We need an integrated infrastructure, cloud-based infrastructure with the machine learning application and relocatable modeling to give access to all these products. And we need different type of a customized application and solution, such as what-if scenario, digital twin, early warning system, and so on and so forth. This will be implemented through the global coast, of course, taking advantage of many existing experience. It has been organized in several thematic focus areas, from short-term to climate change, integrated coastal zone management, and so on. We are gathering many affiliated projects within the UN decade through Cost Predict. And of course, we want at the same time being local, so implement and make available this solution at the local level through the pilots, but also demonstrate that it can be generalized and relocatable at the global scale, replicable through standards and best practice. So we have some barriers that we are sure we will be able to overcome through this Global Coast Initiative. We have established already an international network, and so we have started to establish it because it was not existing, meaning was not existing focus on the coastal component of the global ocean. So we want to overcome the fragmentation of knowledge and sharing science among the different partners and building on that sharing capacity. All the data should be freely available. They are not today, both for the global north and the global south. And we need to engage as much as possible the stakeholders since the beginning. You will see we are trying to do that, and today is a good practice, starting point. We need to build trust in the solution, which is still very low. I was discussing before with the coastal manager saying, I don't find the solution I need, so we need really to build this trust along the next years. And of course, there is a complexity also when we go to implement. I mean, the study case that is much more than a study case that has been done in Rimini. It takes it takes several years, and of course it's done at the local level. So building international collaboration for study cases is a long way forward. Where we are now, we are about 125 pilot sites all over the coastal ocean, more than 30 regions. The total is 34 regions that subdivide the coastal ocean in regions. And we are already more than 200 institutions from more than 60 countries. So it's already a large effort. We are at the beginning. It can grow. It will grow. So actually at the beginning we were thinking about 20 pilots, and then we ended up in few months with more than 120, and they're still open. I mean, it's not funded projects. These are projects that people want to implement, and then we will search where needed. We will search together for the funding. So it's an open process. You can email us and enter the system. Here is where the pilot sites are positioned, and you see that the coverage is already very good. Still missing some areas, but very. We were very satisfied. This was done through an open survey this summer, 4 months open survey, and people were able to get organized and submit the project ideas. The pilots are focusing on what we call impact areas. I won't read them, but you will find the most challenging issues of the coastal ocean, from extreme events to climate indicators and downscaling, maritime safety, spatial planning, sustainable blue economy like mariculture, and so on. So we asked to the people entering the survey to say which were the most urgent areas of interest, the most challenging and important for them. The two most important are extreme events and climate adaptation and mitigation, but others are relevant as well. We asked to the partners to identify the stakeholders and name them, especially focusing on the one they are already engaged. And here you see the analysis, a very broad analysis we have started to do with the local authorities at first, but also emergency response, research community, national agencies, the marine protected area, and the others you can find here. Because we believe it's important to start with the stakeholders. So this is a process in which the co-design is starting with the stakeholders. We also identify the barriers that, and we ask to the partners to identify the barriers, The most prominent is finance, but as well human resources and the technological. But we believe that progressively these barriers can be overcome. Too fast? No? Sorry. So at each pilot site, we will implement new technology in terms of observing and modeling. We will adapt and develop new regional to coastal limited area models, and especially with a focus on artificial intelligence. We will propose projection for the future climate, as well as the reconstruction of the past. So, of course, it will be done in a partnership mode with different research institutes involved and large partnership. So we believe that an open and free global digital infrastructure will be the accelerator, so will be facilitating the access to the products and to the data, as well as the access to service and application to be implemented. And a cloud system will be the basic system to be made available. So a sketch of the infrastructure is a cloud computing platform which will allow the access to observing system, regional modeling with a focus on artificial intelligence, as well as the products I was mentioning before. It should be mainly public cloud service, so to allow free access, but of course commercial could exploit and contribute, so private sector could contribute. Some of the solutions and application is just examples here that you can imagine will be available broadly for each pilot are related to maritime safety, coastal management, marine pollution, planning and nature-based solution, aquaculture, and so on. So most of the examples we have seen, of course, some of them are very complicated. So imagine a digital capacity of supporting Rimini in planning the next step of their coastal strategy. So that's it. You can be part of this. You can email us. You can go to the Cost Predict website, and we can identify new pilots. Some of you are already in, or most of you maybe are already in, but it's really an open process. Thank you.
Thank you, Giovanni. What are the next steps? Everybody, and certainly in our region, is asking, well, what happened to our pilot sites? What are the next steps? Are you going to get in touch with us and tell us what to do next? How do I respond?
Well, two simple steps. One, yes, we will get back in touch. We are analyzing, as you are seeing. Okay, the pilots, we are in the process, so pilots should be contacted. And the next step will be, in case I will search for it, and then we will identify the plan. So we will establish a plan and a funding opportunity if it's needed. In the same time, we are searching for funding for the digital platform, and that's the main step. So the scientific plan, let's say, for each pilot, but maybe Nadia wants to add more.
So you should have already been contacted. Unfortunately, if you're not, that's a problem. Now, it depends, however, if you as a person, were indicated in one of the pilot sites, because we contacted already all the pilot sites as the principal investigator that was put in the site. Okay, but you know, you're very special for us, so we're going to add your name in the list. So there are about 3 phases that we want to expose in January to all the community after having contacted the community. The first phase will be the network built phase, which it's one is a part, very important, the global one. The second one is alternative for funding that we actively searching now. We have several options, but before we talk to you, we are trying to find the best and optimal way before we talk to you. Now, you are a necessary ingredient. I mean, each pilot site is a necessary ingredient, but we have, I would say, several opportunities, especially in developing countries. But, then the chain will build. So it is coming. We are a bit late because the amount of information was given to us is really exceptional. So we have, for each of these 100, and now there are more than 130, because we allowed a few late arrival. So we are more than 130, and we have huge information on existing systems and what is needed by the local community. So this is very important information for the co-design. And we shall thank you for the amazing work you did. Thank you. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Giovanni. We have our last speaker, Pier Paolo Compostrini, Managing Director of the Consortium of Coordination of Research Activities concerning the Venice Lagoon System. So, our last speaker.
Thank you for the invitation. And this will be the main obstacle between you and the dinner tonight, so I would like to be on time. But I will promise fireworks, because Venice, normally in the previous meeting that we did, Venice was the first, because it was an icon for understanding the coastal risks. Luckily, we are the last because we solved some problems. And this is, and in some sense, we can address which is the challenge that we faced, that we are still facing, but you may see that in this picture, how many times the city of Venice, the pavement of the city, the public pavement of the city was flooded per decade. And this was impressive how increased these numbers after the Second World War. So before it was just 2 or 3 events per decade, every 10 years. And between 2010 and 2019, we have 95 events. And during the terrible year, 2019, we have 26 times that we were flooded. And before the solution, the only way to cope with this was adaptation. Adaptation means that you have to live also with water, so closing the entrance of water inside your shops at the level which is possible, or try to make your bar working, rising up all the plugs, electrical plug, in order to have a cappuccino, even when with a high tide, wearing some boots and going to take a cappuccino and tramezzini in that bar near Rialto. Try to walk. But this was something very difficult to continue to adapt in this way. But because the impacts were not only in the life of the people, the life of the people. The schools were closed. It was not possible to go anywhere. But the permanent damages, especially in a city like Venice, where the cultural heritage is high relevance. And these are some pictures. These are the marble of one of the columns in front of San Marco Basilica, which was completely disgregated because it's the continuous contact with the salt water which makes the problem. The bricks, the salt water enters, and then and goes. When the water evaporates, the salt remains inside and crystallize, breaking internally the marble, the bricks, the support for the mosaics. That angle, Gabriele, is placed 10 meters over from the pavement because the capillarity is raising over the bricks, and this crystallization you may see the touch the tiles from their support, both on the walls and also in the pavement. This is an image of what happened during the last flooding events in 2019. The water was very high, and so there was the pavement was raised up, and this the pavement was done in the year 1200. Now has been restored. So the extreme weather event occurred in the 12th of November. The morning was difficult. This kind of acqua alta against the marble of the basilica. This is me inside the atrium of the basilica, talking with the journalist. But what happened in the night was terrible. This was the crypt which was invaded, breaking from a window, and the crypt is below the level of the pavement. They started entering. We were really seriously worried about the risk that the church held in that problem, and they left all the marbles wet and crystallized by salt water. So what is now? This was before. Now, the game changer. But of course, as the Netherlands had their problem, their first big problem in 1953, we had in 1966. That was a picture of the 1966 event. And these are in this video, some representation of what I explained before. And the images were not calculable. So the MOSE, the barrier system, is the real game changer. 4 barriers are placed at the entrance of the lagoon. They are able to temporarily close the sea entrance from the lagoon to the sea. They are made these kind of barriers. There are iron barriers which are 20 meters large, up to 35 meters long. They can be raised. They realize that when raised, a protection of 1.56 kilometer of iron. This is not a picture. I mean, it's not like only a drawing. It's real, and it is impressive. Now we can say that both the lagoon ecosystem and the cultural heritage of Venice is resisting the effects of these high tides, notwithstanding the sea level rise. Yes, I have a picture. No, again. Eccolo qua. No, I needed to go further. Eccolo qua. This is the drawing what you saw in animation. So I will not stay longer. Of course, this is just a part of a complex intervention system that included also some protection of the islands in front of and near the lagoon. So the seawalls which were made by the Republic of Venice in 1793 was a new shore was built in front of it. So this littoral island of Pellestrina was defended with a lot of sediments carried from the central of Adriatic was carried. So there was the possibility, and also, and this is something that I am particularly proud of, the St. Mark Basilica that you saw, there was terribly hit by the 2019 flooding, is now protected from any high tide. Also the smaller one, for those for which the MOSE system is not entering into function, because we cannot close completely. The idea of having mobile barrier is to leave the breadth of the lagoon. So there are some ideas for isolating the overall islands. We cannot wait for the completion of the work, so we realize, which is something simple but very effective, a bit controversial, but we found a glass barrier. The glass is important for Venice, and the glass barrier allowed to have a site. You may notice that it's very transparent. I found a very transparent glass, 4 times more transparent than the normal glass, which is able to maintain the pressure even from a high tide, even without Mose. We can say today that San Marco Basilica will never again flooded. But actually, the Venice model is an integrated solution for a complex system. To have a city inside the lagoon is something that normally you cannot see anywhere, because it's very complicated. And so there's not just one solution. We did in the years, in 50 years, there is a law in Italy which has been done almost, no, more than 50 years ago, saying that Venice is a national priority. The conservation of Venice is a safeguarding of Venice, and this lagoon is a national priority. So a lot of money has been spent by Italian taxpayers, more than 13, 14 billion of euro. The model itself cost 6 billion, but other, both in for environmental protection, increasing of environmental resilience, something similar to what we saw in China has been done also in our salt marshes, some local defenses in the urban settlements, and of course the mobile barrier and storm defense that I already spoke about. Everything is the need of maintenance, and management is very complicated. Also, the institutional solutions are quite complicated in a country like Italy. However, at the end, we can say for saving Venice, we use the mixed approach, which is adaptation and resistance. So adaptation is depending also because the city itself is not laid on the same plane. There are some differences in altimetry, and so we are the San Marco Piazza is the lowest part of Venice, must be isolated with a certain way, and the church itself must be defended in a different way, even lower. Then we defend the monument at monument level of the Piazza San Marco, in the square of San Marco. The island around San Marco is defended impermeabilized in a different way, and then the lagoon is defended from a certain level. This approach is in some sense very environmental friendly, a bit more than the Dutch approach at the beginning. So we had more constraints in maintaining the same environment we had, because for the simple reason that you had 2,000 deaths with that event. Unfortunately, in our case, we have a lot of damage in 1966, but nobody died. So at the end, our approach was to maintain everything, no? Without, so we maintain the environment, the port, the tourism, the activity, the old buildings, whatever, no? So, but we want also to be defended. That's why we invented these mobile barriers, which were active more than 60 times from that moment. 60 times is a lot in 3 years. The first moment was the 3rd of October 2020, and in 3 years we have more than 60 times. This was not foreseen. The problem is what will happen afterwards, no? Because this is a picture of the actual residence time of the water in the lagoon. The lagoon is subjected to a bidiurnal tide. It's like a breath. The high tide takes into the lagoon oxygenated waters. Low tide, the water goes out. Dirty water flushing out is flushed 2 times per day. And this means that the age of the water inside the lagoon is varying with the zones, but we need to maintain this continuous breath in order to maintain the ecosystem services inside the lagoon. That's why we are worried that what will happen in the future, because with the estimated sea level rise, depending on our behavior in the next decades, but in any case, the sea level will rise. So we are almost sure, scientifically sure, that the sea level will rise in the next 100 to 200 years, at least. And then what we done? We have more time now to say what will happen at the end of the century. We takes almost 50 years to think and realize the MOSE, which is these mobile barriers which allow to maintain this paradigm of breathing. This paradigm, in any case, for the end of the century, maybe some decades after or some decades before, if you are lucky or unlucky, cannot be, the mobile will never be mobile. You will close more than open. Oh? So you have to change the paradigm. What to do? We do not know. So we don't know. We have not decided yet. We are starting in this moment when we are protected. The first element is to be protected. Then, now, we can say, okay, to the world, stay together, in order, because in some sense, what will happen, what has happened in Venice will happen in other coastal cities. We do have an experience. We can suggest, I spoke with our Caribbean friend, that we went to Antigua to explain them how to protect their cultural heritage monuments. And so we are ready to share this experience of the past. For the future, we must be in contact also with all the other scientific community, political also, because it's not just a problem of science, it's a problem of legislation, it's a problem of resources. That's why we are part of this campaign of the United Nations, Making City Resilient. And we are being recognized as a resilient hub for the efforts that we spent, for our will also to discuss further with other cities, to transmit, because nobody has the real solution, and one size does not fit all in coastal protection and in urban protection. But some approaches can be compared. We can find together a solution, and the fact that Venice is protected now, in some sense, is also a way to say that this mission is possible. It's possible to adapt to the sea level rise. It's possible to be protected. Could be difficult, but we have not to call Tom Cruise for having Mission Impossible. Because this is a mission possible, and Venice is the demonstration. Venice wants to be the oldest city of the future. Thank you for your attention.
We have time for one question or two.
Thank you. Very interesting presentation. But Venice is a very unique situation, isn't it? I'm just wondering about, one, do you foresee that there may be some lower cost solutions to addressing SLR in cities in the developing world? But also, there will also be significant differences in methodology or products used because of the positional differences. So how do you, if a mayor of a particular city began experiencing the same thing, where would you want to start?
Thank you for this question, because it allows me to tell two important things. The first is that what we did in the terms cost a lot in terms of studies, a long process by trials and errors, but there is no patent here. Okay, so Italy, I could say, is available to get all this experience free to the rest of the world. It's an open source way, in some sense. So in any case, this is something that I can say because it's also a governmental decision. The results has been taken with Italian money, but the results is given to the world freely, okay? So first. Second is that not all the approaches are very high technology, intensive technology. There is no rocket science here. It could be complicated in some parts. If you have the mobile barriers are complicated, but not so much. The realization could be costful, but the cost of these, for instance, what our colleague from Houston in Texas, Gulf of Texas, Gulf of Houston, they have foreseen a project which cost is something about 40 billion euro. But they are the states, they can afford it. And there could be other kinds of solutions, like you saw also the glass barrier is not so costly, but it's just a matter to know what to do. When we went to Antigua, we say, okay, we know what to do. So it is easier to access the adaptation. Nothing is completely cheap or gratis. There is no gratis lunches anymore. But the cost, we are ready. There are also some, the approaches can be different and can be discussed. We are ready to discuss because again, we discussed with the mayor of Aveiro, Portugal, Atlantic Ocean. It is something, of course they are different tides, they are different system. So we have all the capacity to model, because of our friends of mathematical model, we can model everything. The most important thing is are the approaches. We did this path, again, it was not a linear, it was trials and errors. So just to say, do not do the same mistake that we did, and try to follow our best practices. Venice is candidate to be the place where this discussion can occur. So we have not to be scared that everything costs billions. No, there are other things which can have much less intensive technology, and in any case, the approach is the knowledge is universal and free.
Thank you. So, with that, we conclude the fourth session. I am getting back the mic to Nadia to formally close the workshop.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So thank you all of you by staying until late. And it was really exciting to have so many experiences intercompared, discussed, and we will certainly do it another time, maybe even better, more, but the complexity of the issue does not take us away from the mission that we have to take decisions under uncertain conditions. And when we do that, we should be based on science. We got so many examples that if you have that uncertainty that is rooted into science, you might find a good solution. So with these words of hope, I would like to thank you again, and I hope to be in touch with all of you very soon. We will. I just want to say that tomorrow we have our program committee meeting here, and everybody is invited to come to assist if interested. Actually, we would be very honored if the people who are here still for tomorrow are coming and discuss with us the future of our DCC, Decade Collaborative Center.